Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Just Another Biz podcast. Hey, Gabby.
Hey, Kari, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing good. Spring is on the horizon.
It is. I know. It's finally not raining in LA, which is nice.
Praise.
We're all a little, the rain puts us out. I had to go somewhere the other day and they were like, "You're so brave for coming here in the rain." And I was like, "Thank you, I guess." I mean, it's not like there's icy roads, but
Oh, I swear, rain in LA stops the entire city. People don't know what to do with themselves.
yeah,
So
too
hopefully we can,
cold.
yeah,
All those
right?
things.
Hopefully
Yeah,
we can be a little bit of sunshine for anybody listening from a rainy state.
exactly. Awesome. Well, today we're talking about a little something that is kind of hard for business owners to do, but can make a huge difference in your business, and that's outsourcing.
Yeah. So I know we've talked to several other business owners that they say delegating and outsourcing is actually really daunting to them. And I think we agree and we can talk about our experience, but they feel like they might lose control, right? Like if they're outsourcing
Mhm.
something, how do you control that? How do you know it's going to be how you would want it done? And we were asking people on Instagram a few questions about outsourcing, what their experience has been. So I think Carrie and I were really like, let's chat about it. We've been on both sides of the coin where we've outsourced some things and we had to uh, cut back on it, but we've also outsourced and had it be super helpful and super successful. So we're really excited to jump into this topic.
Yeah, for sure. I I think outsourcing can be really scary for small businesses when you are like a one woman or one man show and you're like you said you're afraid to let go of the control, right? Letting someone else step in and take over. I think the biggest thing, for me was like as I started my business, kind of figuring out like what are my weaknesses and what am I good at? And it was easy to kind of pinpoint that because it would be like, what's falling to the end of my to-do list every week or every month? And I kept thinking to myself, oh, yeah, I should have been blogging, or I really should stay more on top of my finances in my business and reconciling bank accounts, things like that. And so I think we both wanted to share a little bit about what we've outsourced in our business and how that experience has been for us. So, Gabby, we've both been in business for about the same amount of years. I know you have a little bit bigger team than I do. So I'd love to kind of hear maybe where you started outsourcing and what was sort of the moment for you to be like, I need to do this. This will change my business.
Yeah, I think like for us being in the event industry, outsourcing client projects was really hard at first. I knew we eventually grew the team and we found the right people, but I have gone through a handful of lead planners and event planners before I found the right people. And I think that was okay. I had to go see who's a good personality for me, who is going to put in the same amount of work. And I remember once hearing from someone saying, no one's going to care about your business as much as you, the owner. Right. And so I had to remember that I'm like, okay, I can't outsource the vision of the business. I can't outsource the big goals, but there are things within the business that can be done by other people. So, all that to say, we did grow the team. So, I guess that's a little bit of outsourcing there. And we found the right people, but we did cycle through people that were not a good fit. And that was okay. We have outsourced for many years bookkeeping, and I know that's something you've outsourced to. And I will say that was the greatest decision of all times.
Yeah.
I will never go back to doing my own books. I mean, not only did I do them incorrectly, but they were finding ways for me to save money at the end of the year. So I mean, we can give a ton of recommendations, for people that wanna message us about our bookkeepers and whatnot, but that was something that I was like, "Wow, we needed that." That was a big, big step. Um, and I have gone through a virtual assistants, so VAs to do a variety of admin tasks and projects along the way. And most recently, I would say just 2 months ago now, we did finally hire on, a social media manager, and that's been something that I've gone back and forth on. I have outsourced it before and then I took it back and I outsourced and took it back. And I think, you know what, now that I'm saying this out loud, one of the biggest challenges was that I wasn't communicating with the people
Mm,
exactly what I wanted, right? And so for those of you who are like the control part, you're like, that was me. I'm listening to this. How do I regain control or make sure that it is done the way that I'd want it done? You, as the owner, have to tell your team how you want it done. Of course, don't micromanage and let them get creative, but don't be afraid to speak your mind. And that was the biggest thing that I did differently this time around.
yeah, that's huge. I mean, I feel like letting go of those things can be scary. And it's like, again, you think they're not going to understand my vision or be able to speak to an audience the way I would speak to them. But if you find the right person, like it's a game changer and, at the same time.
Yeah. What have you outsourced, and are you still outsourcing the same things that you've done from the very beginning, or did it kind of switch around?
Yeah, I'd say similar to you. I definitely did my own bookkeeping in the beginning and was also not it was like incorrect. When I finally hired someone, they were like, "Why haven't you reconciled, your bank statements with?" I was like, "What do you mean?" Like I thought I was doing that, but it
Yep.
like wasn't being done correctly in QuickBooks. So bookkeeping has honestly been the best thing. And I mean it at the same time, it was also I don't have these like massive transactions daily and things like that. So it wasn't overly complicated, but it was just helpful to have someone else manage that and kind of understand how to categorize things, how to honestly run QuickBooks. And that took off so much of my plate because now it's like I can communicate with her and look at statements on a monthly basis and then reevaluate from there. Um, Also CPAs, but that's a touchy subject for me because I feel like I have not found a great
Mm.
CPA that really cares about my small business. And so I'm kind of in the search for a new one. So if anyone has any recommendations, please let me know. And it was also something that I've looked into this year because it's a huge cost of my overhead. And I've kind of realized I'm paying them a lot of money for not great service, which is a huge thing in my book of like, if you're not providing the service that you say you're going to, and I'm also paying you an arm and a leg every month, then it's not worth it. Um, Other things that I've kind of also gone back and forth. I had like a lead planner for a while and someone that kind of worked more part-time with me and helping with client projects. And then that ended last year. But I still have an assistant who works maybe like 10 to 20 hours every month. And she helps me do weekly blogging. She manages my Pinterest, any like press publication things, helps with my marketing newsletter. And so kind of random tasks. It's also like admin. She'll answer, random emails for me that come in, just like vendor related things. And so I would say she is the best person that like is so valuable to me because she can just kind of step in with whatever because she knows the business. Um and
And
that's kind of going to like I almost cut her during COVID because I at the time was like I got to cut every single cost that I have because I'm not going to be booking any clients. And I had emailed her and was like, maybe we'll take a break for a little bit on like blogging, kind of see what's happening. And then probably a couple weeks later, I was like, hey, never mind. Because I realized I didn't know everything that she already knew about managing the blog and Pinterest and all of this stuff that would have taken so much more time for me to manage. And, with COVID, there was like a whole host of other things to manage. So
yeah.
that was one thing I learned quickly, like, oh, I'm not going to give that up. And if for some reason she were to quit, she's written everything out and she could train someone coming in next because I would never take those tasks back again.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great point, and I was gonna say, how did you get to a point where you trusted that person? Because it sounds like she did a lot of different tasks, and she's a bit of a unicorn in the sense that she
Yeah.
is capable of doing all those things. And I think something that's pretty scary for a lot of people out there is they're like, oh my gosh, do I need a specialist in every single category? Or are there virtual assistants that, or even people that work locally that can fill those roles? And so how did you guys, whether it was training, or onboarding, how long did that take to get it to a point where you're like, I trust her writing skills, I trust
Yeah.
her to represent my company?
Yeah. Well, she lived in LA when I first met her, and she actually worked for me like assisting on weddings, and so she had been working in that capacity with me and had actually led a couple weddings. And then she kind of just sort of felt, I was like, hey, do you want to help with more things with like blogging and admin stuff? And it kind of just evolved into this role. And then she ended up, her and her family moved out of state. And I was just like, do you want to stay on? Because she had sort of gotten the rhythm. And a lot of it in the beginning was sort of like, hey, a lot of feedback from me. Let's change this to sound more like me. And a lot of it was sort of me editing and reviewing those things, which I still do. She'll, draft a blog post and I'll go back and fix it and add in, certain things that might feel more like my voice. Um, but yeah, I feel like just kind of over the years she's learned. And I think some of those things too, she like took my Pinterest course that I had bought and like, learned those things about how to manage a blog and like how to get better SEO. So some of those things I think she self-taught
Mm.
to figure that out. But she's like, I really enjoy it. And it's kind of become one of those things for her where she's like starting to do that more even for other people. Um, so yeah, it's kind of evolved over time.
And
And I
that's
think I just, from the beginning, I trusted her because she had
yeah,
been working with my business. So she like knew the wedding industry
yeah,
and how to speak to that clientele as well.
yeah. And that's a hard yeah, it's a hard person to find, but once you find them and there's flexibility with hours, keep them on as much as you can. I think one mistake that I made in searching for that kind of person, essentially that person is in a support role. And I think I kept posting that we were looking for additional help and almost making it seem like it was too much of a glamorous event
Mm.
planning role when in reality it was a support role, and there's nothing wrong with that. There are people that thrive in support roles and they do such an amazing job, and we need them. We absolutely need them. And so, if there is any advice I can give to people is making sure that you're clear in your job description and you're not making it seem like it's some, yeah, overly glamorized thing where you're going to be doing the job of the CEO. In fact, you're not. You are there for support role. There will be data entry, there will be blogging, writing, all that kind of stuff. And so that sets you up to receive the right candidates from the beginning. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. I think, having those support roles is huge, right? Because it allows you to focus on other aspects of your business and growing your business. And yeah, maybe it is when posting about those jobs, it is making it more clear of, this is a support role. And even I think too of this might be, a project based thing as well. Like as projects come in for me, I need more help. And when it's slower, I don't maybe need as much help with certain things in my business. And so, even with my assistant, that's kind of how it works. Like every month is different with hours, and it really just depends on what kind of emails I'm getting. Or, even sometimes I'll randomly email her and be like, hey, can you do research for this client? I need to find XYZ for their wedding. And so it's great just to like throw something at her, and it's kind of, up and down, but she's also flexible, and we have that understanding of that flexibility throughout the month.
That's good. Yeah. And all that to say communication, right? Like any of these outsource role, communication is key anywhere, anytime for
For sure.
anyone. It still always is the case.
Yeah. I mean, I know we talked a little bit about our fears and kind of delegating, letting go of those things, but what are some other personal fears do you feel like you've had initially before even hiring someone or looking for someone?
So I think the first one that comes to mind for a small business especially is how much is it gonna cost? Like, we think big dollar amounts for outsourcing anything, and we were talking before we started recording this episode about, well, what is your time worth, right? So, figuring out what is your hourly wait rate worth if you were to take more time to work on sales, for example, if you book, you sell a product or you book one of your services for 1,000 or $100 doesn't even matter. That hour that you're able to book a new client or sell a new product is worth the $40 an hour virtual assistant or bookkeeper that will cost you 500 for the year, whatever that is.
Mhm.
And I think making it known ahead of time, what is your time worth? What's your value? Um, and yeah, you have to have a little bit of cash in the bank. You have to pay these people from the very beginning. So keep that in mind. But perhaps you budget for a few months trial first and see how much time it took off of your plate so that you work to get more sales, more clients, and more services. And I would say, yeah, I think price, for value of the work is a big fear for some people. And that was something that came up on Instagram when we asked our audience. They are like, I don't know how to find the right people, and I don't know how much I can afford to pay them.
Yeah. I think that's a great point of doing like a trial. I mean, because most of these people, besides like a bookkeeper, CPA, you're kind of hiring like another business. Sometimes you're signing a contract with those people. But like a social media assistant or someone like that, usually it's a part-time job for someone or they're kind of filling in for another like supplemental income. But I think it's great to lead with, I want to like, let's try this for 3 months and really see. I guess that's really looking at your budget, right? Like seeing how much you're paying, really like tracking your hours and like what sort of goals you're reaching, having this person step in and to help take over those tasks. Um, because even for me, when I had like an associate planner for a couple of years, I realized like we were getting busier and having more work. But also when I looked at my bottom line, it was for me, I was like, oh, I was spending a lot of money still to pay this person, even though I needed them. And so for me, it was reevaluating like, was it worth it for me, or do I need to take on less clients to have a greater profit margin? And for me at the end of the day, like, and for you, this is our sole income, for like ours, we're providing for our families as well. And it was really like, okay, how much am I spending versus how much am I actually profiting? And I really had to make a hard decision too of like, okay, I don't know that I'm going to bring on another person after she left. And I think even last year I did that and I actually enjoyed it because I still had like, my part-time assistant. Um, but yeah, I think really looking at those numbers can really tell you a lot about your business and whether it's worth it to keep it or to cut it.
Yeah. And is that like that kind of conversation for somebody who's just starting their business and doesn't even know how to do what we call break even points or looking at that, is that something your bookkeeper would help you with? Or is that more of a, I guess it's not a well, I guess this could be a CPA question in the sense of hiring. Um, Carrie and I both use Gusto for payroll and all that kind of stuff. And you can definitely pull reports and to see how much you paid people throughout the year, contractors and employees. But who are we having those conversations with in terms of, does this make sense for my business?
Yeah, I mean, I have had conversations with my bookkeeper. Um, but I wouldn't say she fully steps into that role, which some bookkeepers might. She doesn't necessarily do that, so they're kind of more conversations with myself and maybe my husband sometimes. So, do I think this is like worth it? And it's really sitting down to look at the numbers and it sucks sometimes, right? Because it's like, yeah, I'd love to have this conversation with somebody, but maybe I just need to decide what's right for me. And again, test it out, see like getting rid of it. And, for me, like the associate planner, like I tested it out for a year and I was like, okay, that actually helps increase my profit margins. But again, like kind of weighing those out of like, did I get my time back or did I get more profit, but was my time like sucked dry and I never had any free time? So it's like weighing out what's more important to you.
Yeah. And going to your peers, I feel like we talk about community on this podcast and we talk about making sure that this is not a lonely journey for people like entrepreneurship while you are maybe a solo entrepreneur, but there are people all over, whether it's just online community or networking groups. Don't be afraid to ask these questions because I think what we found, and one of the reasons we wanted to start this podcast is people are asking these questions all the time, and the answers vary greatly just depending on how people's businesses are structured, but none of them are just the ultimate answer. I think there's many ways you can go about this. And starting small, I think too, don't overwhelm yourself by hiring on somebody full time when you don't know how much you're gonna book by the end of the year, what your income's going to be. So baby steps in all of this in outsourcing. But I think Carrie and I are both very pro outsourcing
Yeah.
for certain tasks, certain things that where it'll benefit you getting your time back. And on that note, kind of there's not just in order to benefit your business, you can also outsource some things on the personal side of life. What in your life, Carrie, are things that you maybe have outsourced before or are outsourcing now?
Yeah. Um, I'm trying to think. I think a big thing for me is groceries. I definitely use Instacart a lot. I like paid for the yearly membership. So, which is then essentially I think gives you like free delivery for for certain orders over like a certain dollar amount. But honestly, that does save me time. I mean, I live in LA, so going to the grocery store can be like an hour plus. Or like Instacart, you can do groceries, Target, whatever it is. So that's a big thing that I've done that is really helpful. Because for me to, if I am working all day, I don't want to go at 5 p.m. when everybody else is going to the grocery store. So just putting that order in online. Um, I have done like cleaning, like house cleaning before, where it wasn't on a regular basis, but maybe it was like monthly just to do a deep clean or before I had guests coming. And I remember looking back at those moments and I was like, I'm so glad. It was like a trip my family was coming and I was so glad that I paid to have someone come clean because I think it took her like 6 hours to clean
Wow.
everything. It was like deep clean. And it was nice because I didn't have 6 hours to not be working before my family showed up for like a week vacation.
That's a
So
full workday.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a okay, yeah, that actually is a big I didn't know how long it takes to clean. I feel like I've done it once or twice, maybe like 3 hour I don't know, but yeah, deep clean, I
Yeah.
would understand that's a full day.
Yeah. And so, I mean, yeah, definitely stuff like that where they might be small tasks, but they save me a lot of time. Either whether it's a lot of time or even just a small amount of time. If my day feels stressed and overwhelmed with meetings, different things like that, that's like one less thing that I have to do and feel less stressed about doing, especially where I live.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
that okay, so this brings up a good point. Some of these things that you've done are one-time outsource, right? So
Mhm.
for anybody listening who is like, "Oh gosh, I'm still really nervous to commit to even a month of something." There are these one-time services that you can outsource. Like outsourcing can be very small, as much as a one-time Instacart order, because that day you're like, I'm going to crank out some contracts all day. I cannot be disturbed. And if that contract comes back and is worth $10,000 and you just spent $100 on Instacart, I mean, amazing that it was
Yeah.
very much worth the outsource. So thinking, and we live in this generation of this time of apps for everything. So there is probably an app out there that you can outsource pretty much anything. Like I think of TaskRabbit,
Oh my gosh.
the
Yeah.
cleaning supply, like or the cleaning people. But oh my gosh, yeah, there's
There's
so
even
many.
I haven't needed it because I have laundry at my house, but I saw an ad recently for like you can send your laundry out to be washed, fold it, and they literally drop it back off and it's folded, ready to go at your door.
Wow.
So yeah, there's really a whole host of options. But
I
Gabby,
mean,
what have you done that has helped you?
so yeah, aside from cleaning, which we have definitely done a couple times, and that's been an absolute blessing. I would say kind of on a personal level, maybe even cooking, like home cooking, whether it's those delivery services, or even like a Grubhub situation,
Yeah.
which is similar to Instacart, and you have it pick up. Like if we are just really, my husband's an entrepreneur too. If we are both working and it's a busy work day and it's worth us plugging away at work for another hour and having our food delivered or making sure we have, food stocked up, like in your case, Instacart. Absolutely. I think those services are so helpful in our day and age. But also, I was going to say, how funny that, we talk about slow entrepreneurship, which I know we'll have a whole other podcast just talking about that probably. But these apps are designed to get faster through things, right? Like it's the opposite of slow entrepreneurship. I mean, in a dream world, we would all just work 3 hours, 4 hours, be super
What
productive.
a dream.
A total dream that maybe doesn't exist for everybody right now. So, baby steps. I think we can all get to that slow entrepreneurship life, but we've also mentioned in past episodes that there is a time for the hustle. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you are like a new, fresh entrepreneur and you're like, I'm hustling, you got to get your clients. You can't just sit back and relax quite yet. So, yeah, use those apps to bring you
Yeah.
food faster and work more hours.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've definitely done that, especially during the day, like lunchtime. Just like, I mean, and it's not super healthy to just keep like working through lunch. But yeah, when I am back to back calls on certain days, it's like just easier to place an order and have it arrive. Um, and granted, I think like you said earlier, a lot of these things, it's like you don't have to commit to it for a year. It's like testing it out, seeing how it works for you. I mean, I definitely don't, I try to scale back on ordering out, things like that. Cause right, again, that adds up and hurts your bottom line. At the end of the
Yeah,
day, if it's not really giving you, maybe it's giving your time back, but if you're not actually growing your business or making more money by getting that time back, then maybe it's
right.
not worth it. And you just have to learn how to manage your time better.
Totally. Oh gosh, that would be a whole separate conversation
Yeah.
for sure. And I thought it'd be fun to kind of mention just in general, when we polled people on Instagram, we asked like, what are some of the common or what are some of the things that you've outsourced? We talked about some of them, social media, bookkeeping, taxes, Pinterest is and blogging. We could pause on for a moment because uh, I had a Pinterest business where actually I can speak on the fact that I was one of these people that was an outsourced service for other people. So during COVID, I launched a Pinterest management company. I still sell a Pinterest course, but I got busy with my main business again after COVID kind of events picked back up. So I paused on the actual Pinterest management. But basically, what I was doing is I was getting approached by in this case, it was fellow wedding planners, photographers, florists that were saying, we know the value of Pinterest. We know we need to spend time on the platform, but we don't want to do it. And we know that we can spend the hours, but we're not doing it right. And your expertise is worth it for us to do our job better. So, for
Mhm.
example, at the time, I think it was, like $400 a month, right? And so people would pay us $400 a month. We would log in to their Pinterest account and use the photos that they gave us, professional photos from events, and we would go and caption them properly and pin them on Pinterest. And so we're creating all of this content for them. Meanwhile, they don't have to lift a finger. And down the road, they get to see their analytics go up. They get to see, outbound clicks to their website, and then they can take it from there. So the goal is for us to drive the traffic to their website. And once they get on the website, then our clients will wow them with their work. So I think we experienced it on that side. I will say the one thing that was shocking to me as a business that people were outsourcing, It was the lack of response that I would get in email. So, for example, I think they really, really wanted to be so hands off that we rarely got email responses about, "Hey, do you have any new content we can post?" Or, "Hey, it's time for your monthly check-in call." Crickets. It was actually really
Interesting.
yeah,
Oh
it
my
was
gosh.
really shocking. Um, and I think it's one of those things, it was one of those services where they were like, "We don't even want to learn it. Like, we
Yeah.
want you to take it on. We don't wanna worry about it."
Right.
And I get it. I get that. But also our job, we're at the mercy of the information that these
Sure.
business owners were giving us. So that was kind of a tough one. I'm glad I did it for the 3 years. It got us through COVID, but yeah, it was
So I mean, essentially that service that you were providing was maybe like a one-time deal. So, or was it like you had to book with us for 3 months, or was it
yeah.
like 1 month, or was it like a short-term contract?
It was 3-month minimum.
Okay.
I wanna say we gave them a slight discount if they booked on for 6 months or a year. I
Okay.
can't remember what it was, but I think there was an incentive, and that's something that you guys can ask, these services that you're using. If you did your free 1-month trial, which a lot of people offer a free one-month trial for more of the app type stuff. If you love it so much, there's usually discounts for the yearly, membership where, you could pay monthly for some type of bookkeeping online, but if you're like, "Hey, I'm ready to commit to the year," you might get a couple $100 off is,
Yeah.
something I've noticed in the past.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I think 2 points with that. I think that's great, even to again try something out, right? Being like, "Okay, I'm gonna commit to 3 months, see how this helps my business, and then I can decide if I wanna commit more." But also that got me thinking about Pinterest and outsourcing, but to like I automation type of things where it's like we use Tailwind, so we pay a yearly price for that or a yearly fee. And so Tailwind essentially like links up to Pinterest and it will automatically repost photos for you and you can schedule them and basically helps with that. And so that's another way of outsourcing, right? Like we've paid for this automated service to help with our Pinterest. And so there's a ton of other things like that to help you have more automation in your business, which is another great way to help you save time. And those things might be a little bit cheaper, right? Because you're not paying someone an hourly basis, but maybe you're signing up for a monthly or a yearly subscription. And I mean, I think both of us have a ton of those things that help
Yeah.
us with automation, whether it's, Honeybook, like contracts, or even for me, like I use Aisle Planner with clients and things that are automatically sending emails or reminders to me. And that is like so helpful. And I would keep those subscriptions because I know the value in those for me on a yearly basis.
Yeah. The probably the biggest if I go back into true like including all of the apps and tech and stuff like that, things that I outsource, probably the very first thing I outsourced was payment, like
Mm,
client payments and contracts. Because you're right. I think that was one of the things is like, I don't want to chase down checks and make these invoices on Word or
yeah.
whatever. I mean, we've all started there and that is perfectly fine. But boy, as soon as you have a taste of that client payment automation, it is a glorious moment. You
It
just
is.
press send and the app will remind them for you. So oftentimes people either don't see the email come in a few days later, it'll remind them if they still haven't paid, it'll remind them again and then also it'll remind them a week before the payments due on the next one. So it's like I don't
Yeah.
have to that's the worst thing for a business owner, right? Is to try to chase payments
Oh, for sure.
and I'd rather a robot do it for me.
And even sign up that kind of automation, whether it is the reminders, but sometimes a lot of my clients put it on auto pay. So it's like they're even
Yeah.
outsourcing, like, hey,
Yeah.
I don't want to think about having to pay her, every 2 months or whatever the schedule is. They're like, I'm fine setting this to auto pay. So when it's like February 1st, that payment is due, it automatically goes through. And I think on like a client experience and for me, it's just easy for both of us and it makes it one less thing on our to-do list.
Yeah. And speaking of tech and automation and robots, What are your thoughts on AI as an outsource type
Oh
of
man.
situation?
Yeah. I I have used like Chat GPT a couple of times. It's great. It's kind of scary. But I like truthfully haven't dove into a lot of AI stuff. I feel like I'm being a little resistant
Mhm.
towards it, which makes me sound old, but
I mean, that's how we always are with tech. Everyone is I mean, there's people that jump on, but yes, I understand
yeah.
the resistance.
So I honestly haven't tried it out a ton. I have used it for some stuff, and there's a lot of programs even that I use that's like try AI and have it write this caption for you. But I truthfully just haven't dove into it. But have you?
I dipped my toe. I think I'm overwhelmed by how much it can do. I
Yeah.
and that we should have somebody on as a guest to talk about it specifically and how to just make it approachable for small business owners because we did my team and I did actually ask it to create some yearly goals for us. And it was really interesting in terms of like growth goals that it came up with or dollar amounts or connecting with new vendors for weddings and stuff like so it created like a kind of plan for us but it was still very robotic so
Yeah.
I'm just yeah trying to figure out how can it continue to learn who we are as we ask it questions. I don't know if that's
Right.
only for the pro version. If anybody out there knows more about AI and you want to come on the podcast, please let us know. We have questions.
I mean, we used it to figure out a title for this podcast.
Oh, this
So
is true. But wait, did we end up doing our own thing though at the
we
end?
did. I
Yeah.
think we were like putting words together and like trying. I mean, some of them were really awful suggestions, but it helped. It was like a good brainstorming session because it like threw new words at us and we were like, oh, I didn't even think about that. That's kind of
Yeah.
fun. So I do think it's going to be very helpful and is helpful. I just don't know enough about it to, you know, see how it's going to help my business. But
Yeah. I do have a blog sometimes. I will say I still have to go in and tweak it. And you can ask it to write it in a certain tone, and you can also copy one of your own blogs that you wrote and say, "Write it like this." So that was interesting
oh,
because
okay.
I was like, "Okay, get to know my voice from this blog post that I wrote. Now rewrite what you just wrote, but in my voice." And I think there's a lot of ethical dilemma around it. Is it actually your blog? Is it who wrote it? I don't know. It's very
Yeah,
touchy
because
subject.
yeah, I was like, haven't they kind of mentioned some like legal copyright issues? And yeah, I guess I'm not
Yeah.
sure how to navigate that. I kind of have seen that around on social media of being careful not to,
Yeah.
copy word for word what AI is producing for us. But
Exactly. Yeah, you have to go in and kind of make your own because regardless, it still doesn't sound like you.
right.
It
So yeah, if anyone knows more than us, please let
yeah,
us know.
yeah. Help us not ramble about AI and
Yeah,
actually give us
anyway.
some facts.
So Gabby, I guess to kind of like put a bow on outsourcing, what would be a piece of advice that you'd have to other people, or maybe again, something you'd share with younger Gabby about outsourcing?
Well, this is something I just thought of in this moment. And you know what? We could have had a whole other bullet point about this, but I will say this. I think when you're first starting to outsource or first starting to think about outsourcing, write down all the tasks that are either daunting or you're not good at. They take up too much of your time and you know someone could do it better and perhaps faster. And then add up your hourly, what is your hourly worth, right? What if you were to break down your services or your product, how much is that worth hourly? And the other thing I was going to say, like, yes, you can go ahead and slowly start hiring, but I would say what we haven't talked about is can you trade services with somebody? Is there a
Oh, yeah.
way that if you're just getting started and money, you're like, I have zero, I have negative dollars at this point. Is there something that you're really good at and know somebody that's really good at that one thing that you're not? Could you guys do a trade? And in that way, that might help you get started, get off the, get your business off the ground and really start delegating those tasks that you are not so great at. But start slow, be somewhat calculated in your decision making here, but don't be scared. I think a lot of people are really
Yeah.
afraid. I think it's okay to start, do it, commit to an hour a week if that's one task, right? Yeah, don't sign up for a whole year right away.
Right. No, I think, yeah, that's good. Yeah, there's a lot of other things we could have dove into there, but
What do you
I
think?
I would say, very similar, writing down a list of things that are not getting done every month. And again, I think that was my biggest thing, right? Was seeing what were my weaknesses and also what did I just hate doing, which kind of fell into that category, right? Like I didn't blog or do Pinterest because I didn't enjoy doing it. And so that kind of fell to the side. So I knew that was something I wanted someone else to take over, and so I think really kind of being honest with yourself of like, I mean, let's face it, we're not good at everything in running a business. And I mean, if you think about it, like anyone, like any business has multiple, people, right? Running different departments because that's what they're good at. And so I think it's really trusting yourself and being vulnerable in a sense of like letting go of what your strengths are not in and letting someone else step in to help you with that.
Yeah. And you don't have to do all the things. I think
Right.
that we didn't even mention that, but we talked about we blog, we do social media, but that we know our industry kind of requires that and it is part of the business, but we are also not super active on TikTok. And I know a lot of other businesses are thriving on TikTok. So I think you also have to remind yourself like you do not have to be on all the platforms and do all the things. Just stick to your basics until you have a good, good clientele or good amount of bookings headed your way and then grow from there.
Yeah. Or what your industry is more specific to, right? Like some people I know thrive on Facebook groups
Oh
and
my God.
having that as part of their business model. That's like Facebook is not a place where my potential clients are hanging out. And so I think it's also trying to pick and choose, depending what industry you're in, what your business is about, being able to decide for yourself which channels you want to utilize and what makes sense for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, well, another great conversation, Carrie. I
Yeah.
feel we, just know jabbers that we have an idea when we start this conversation, but we don't always know where it's going to go. So, thanks for bearing with us, but I think we always kind of bring up some good thoughts and we love hearing from you guys on Instagram. We will be asking more questions as we go along. So, please make sure to send us your thoughts and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Sounds good. Bye, Gabby.
Sorry, I didn't reply.
No, it's okay.
I didn't know.
Leaving
I
me
was like,
hanging.
okay. Oops, I forgot we're still going here. Stop.
44, 6.
Wait, how do I? Oh, here we go.